Hello, my name is Phil. It's Halloween month, so let's talk about horror movies. And I am thrilled to welcome back a mutual fan of horror, Paul Joseph. Look, he's got the best mascot there ever. So you better explain what this is about, because this is all to do with your club night, which is Pop Horror.
Yeah, so I run a club night called Pop Horror that's been going for about 4 or 5 years now, and it's a mashup of horror movies and pop music. And this is our mascot, Cabbage Patch Carrie. I'm trying to get it. Yeah, so we had this made early on to be our little mascot, so she kind of oversees everything.
So we should explain, we've done a second take, because Paul's wearing his Freddy Krueger jumper now. She's still there. So we're giving you some suggestions, obviously some horror films that we enthuse about, we love, we've grown up watching as well. Do you want to start with this, Paul? What are your favourite horror movies of all time?
Yeah. So they're not necessarily my favourite horror movies of all time, but they're probably my favourite for Halloween viewing, because I think there's a certain type of horror movie that's good for Halloween. First off, I'm going to say The Fog,
yes.
The John Carpenter film. There's something about that that's really scary, because the nature of the menace is this fog that can just appear and there's no way of getting away from it. It even comes under the door and stuff. And it also, the film starts with a kind of campfire story about this ship that was washed up on the rocks many years ago, and apparently the ghosts come back, etc., etc. And then this thing happens. So it's really good. It's really gripping. It's really scary, and also it has a great device of having Adrienne Barbeau, who I kind of think is the sort of runner-up scream queen to Jamie Lee Curtis, who is also in The Fog, as a late night radio DJ who's kind of up in a lighthouse, kind of watching all the fog come in and kind of narrating to everybody over the radio, telling them the fog's coming in, move, or whatever. And yeah, I think it's really good. That's a nice, creepy one.
It's the way she gets close to the mic and says, K-A-B, Antonio.
Yeah, I know.
It's so sexy.
I don't know if it is something that inspired you, and obviously, you're a very successful DJ, whereas I'm not really, but it's the sort of thing that and Midnight Caller in the 80s were oh my God, I'd love to be a late night radio DJ.
Absolutely. I'm totally with you. I wanted to be Adrienne Barbeau at that age, and obviously inspired me along with John Peel and others.
Yeah.
What a contrast that was.
She's great. She's great.
I'm going to stick with John Carpenter, the same director, because he, obviously released Halloween in 1978. One of my favourite, actually, it's my favourite film of all time, not just my favourite horror film. Saw it at a very young age. It affected me in a good way as well as in a bad way. I had nightmares for weeks after seeing it. I think I was about 10 when I first saw it. And I just think it's a hugely influential film. Not just horror film, but I think a lot of directors have been inspired by it. And obviously that score, his own score, is amazing in that film.
Yeah, definitely. And also it's one of those films that you almost you sort of remember it wrongly, because you kind of think of a sort of Friday the 13th nocturnal kind of whatever. But a lot of the film is actually in the daytime, and there's a big build-up of this kind of presence that's kind of watching and stalking before anything really bad happens. Yeah, it's that atmosphere that he creates is brilliant.
And there's not much gore in it, really, which when you think about it, you think, it's a really gory film, but it doesn't have hardly any blood at all. I mean, really the only blood is at the beginning when Michael Myers is a child and he kills his sister. So that really is the only blood. I mean, you see a lot of knife attacks, but a lot of it is in your head. And I think that's what's so clever about the film, is that you are terrified because you're imagining a lot more than what you see.
Yeah. One of my next ones, which follows on nicely from this, is Halloween 3. Now, Halloween 2 follows on directly from the events of the first film, and then various other ones follow in that narrative, and I think it resets itself. And I think the new ones kind of act as if maybe the second film hadn't anyway, but with Halloween 3, it's kind of a self-contained story about this corporation that are launching this big product that's going to be launched on TV, and they send the children these Halloween masks to wear whilst they're watching this, but there's an ulterior motive, and so it's quite a nasty, self-contained little creepy story. Yeah, I really liked it.
I remember when it first came out, I was so disappointed because obviously it has no bearing on the other two that preceded. And I loved, maybe not the second one so much, but the first one especially. But the third one, obviously, completely different. And I was gutted.
And I don't think I don't think he did very well, and you can imagine why if you've really built up this kind of very iconic character and this sort of thing, to then shift like that, they probably should have rebranded it as something a bit different, a bit like, like now they're doing American Horror Stories as one-offs instead of, so maybe they should have done that. But it's a kind of a shame, because it would have been nice to carry on that kind of like feature-length, self-contained, creepy stories, really.
And obviously they continued doing that from Halloween 4 onwards, and then it just became ridiculous until H2O, which was a bit better, but then obviously Halloween 2018 got it back on track again. Thank God.
Yeah, with two more to come, aren't there? I think one's coming out in a couple of weeks, and maybe
more. They're saying it's not an end, even though it's called Halloween Ends.
There you go.
My other pick is Carrie from 1976. It's Brian De Palma's masterpiece, I think. One of his many. I mean, so many great films. There she is.
There she is.
She's terrorising the neighbourhood.
Turn her head round quite creepily. There you go.
I think it's a really good movie adaptation of a Stephen King novel as well, because there haven't been many of those either. I mean, obviously, we've got Misery, which was brilliant. But Carrie, I just think it is a total masterpiece in so many ways. The music is great. It's got that terrifying score, but also quite orchestral. And it's a really sad story, because obviously it's about a bullied girl, isn't it? Carrie White.
Yeah.
And that really taps into the emotions, which I think is all part of horror.
Definitely. And it's that real, because there's these glimpses of like positivity in her life and good things, and actually there are people in it with really good intentions, but then the bad stuff outweighs that, and obviously in terms of her control of whatever. So it's really sad, but it's great. And of course that classic scene with the split screen and the prom, it's like much imitated since, but nothing like it, I'd say. It's
so brilliant. It's giving me goosebumps, because along with the score, obviously, which plays a big part in that scene with the split screen effects, it's the tugging on the rope, you see the bucket kind of tilting, obviously about to unleash that blood, and you just don't want it to happen, but then when it does happen, it's all slow motion as well, which adds to that anxiety that you're feeling. It's just superb. It really is great film.
No, it's great, and of course that great jump right at the end.
Still gets me. Still gets me now. I've seen it so many times.
Watching it like being like, oh no.
We're going to move on to a film which has just been reissued. Actually, it was originally released back in 1939. It's called The Dark Eyes of London. Screen icon Bela Lugosi, a scientist, isn't he? A demented scientist on a killing spree. What did you make of this? Because I found this quite a bizarre film. I think it's the first film that got a certificate H for horror or horrific, before obviously the X's and the 18 came in, but obviously this is way back in the 30s. Now it's a PG. It just shows you how times have moved on.
At times it doesn't even feel that much like a horror. It's kind of a bit like a sort of like procedural thriller type stuff going on, of just kind of like weird things happening. And I would have thought with Bela Lugosi being involved, I was expecting him to camp it up a lot more, and it would be a lot more over the top. So it's almost probably more credible than you would think, but I would maybe have wanted something a bit camper. But yeah, it's definitely worth the watch.
I know what you mean, because Bela Lugosi, obviously his character, well, he plays two characters. One of those characters was dubbed by somebody else, obviously because we would have heard his accent, because he's got that very distinctive voice. But there's another character, Wilfred Walter plays like the Frankenstein's monster in a way. He's the villain, isn't he, along with Bela Lugosi's character.
I think the title Dark Eyes of London, I was kind of thinking something really, probably a little bit more sinister. And I think maybe it's one of those films as well, whereas what's going on is maybe quite obvious from the start, but then there's another layer into it about how the perpetrator is getting away with what they're getting away with, which I think is interesting. Odd American detective character thrown in that possibly doesn't need to be there.
That was Hugh Williams, who plays Detective Inspector Larry Holt. He has that real look about him as well. He's got the Brill Cream slap back hair. He looks really polished, and his eyes, I don't know if you noticed his eyelashes, he had like drag queen eyelashes. Every time he turned to the side, they'd be like fluttering. It was amazing.
Brilliant.
It obviously came out the same year that The Wizard of Oz came out, which, when you think about it, is quite a bizarre thing. And also it's based on a novel by Edgar Wallace, who was famous for creating King Kong.
It's definitely worth a look. I just think it's almost, you have to think about the context of the time, and that then you know, that would have been wow, like quite groundbreaking. Yeah, maybe there's other creepier things of the same sort of era that maybe have got a bit more, lasted a bit more, because they had something a bit more iconic about the look of the monster or what was going on, I guess. But yeah, it's worth a look.
But you saying that, I mean, the killings were quite chilling, I thought, especially at the end when it came to its climax. I thought, wow, that's quite dark. Maybe it's just because it was black and white, because I think sometimes a lot of black and white films do have that element of darkness, just because, again, it's what you're not seeing, isn't it? Like we spoke about Halloween. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I'm gonna give it a 3-star. I think it's nice to see it remaster. I mean, it's a good remaster. Yeah,
it's really clear. Yeah, it's great. I'd say 3 stars as well.
Excellent. So it is called The Dark Eyes of London. It's out now on Blu-ray and DVD. But yeah, let us know if you've seen it, what you think of the horror films we suggested, and we've got plenty more where this came from for Halloween. Good to see you, Paul. Thanks everyone for watching.
Bye.